Hello guys, it's Coded Steel and welcome to another tutorial in the processing programming language. Just a few quick notes guys. I might be extending video lengths to somewhere around 15 or so minutes. I will not let it go over 15 minutes, but it's possible as some of the stuff gets more advanced that I might need to go over 10 minutes. So just so that's a heads up. I try to keep my videos pretty short, but they might start getting a little longer. Anyways, enough of that. For the purpose of this tutorial, what we're going to cover is going to be stuff on loops this time. So anybody who's familiar with other programming languages, it's not going to be necessary for you to watch this tutorial, so you could pretty much just skip right ahead to another tutorial. It's not going to help. This tutorial will not benefit you much if you already know about if loops, because that's what we're going to discuss. So anyways, we're going to do a simple thing with if loops today. Another quick thing to note, my first video that I showed you guys, I had a void loop. Well, it's not void loop, it's called void draw. It's different for processing. I know a few different other programming languages, and sometimes I get confused what the functions are for each different programming language. So my bad guys, it's void draw, not void loop. So anyways, an if loop. What an if loop does is basically, what do you use an if for? If something's, you could say, I will do this if this condition is met, or something like that when you're speaking in general English terms. It does the similar thing in programming. I will do this if such and such happens. So that's what's going to happen. If such and such within these parentheses here happens, then I'm going to do whatever's within the curly braces. And actually, keynote, I'm not going to use curly braces because I'm only going to have one line. So if I only have one line of code under the if loop, I don't need a curly braces. But if I'm going to do more than one line, then I need curly braces. So guys, I just typed something called println. So what println does is it's a way to print to the console down here. Actually, and I think I'm just going to make it a regular print. So what I'm going to take in here, guys, is inside of these parameters, I'm going to check and see if a condition's met. And we're just going to check and see if x is not equal to, I'm going to say greater than 40. And then if it is, then we want to print something. And what we're going to print is we're going to say that the variable x is greater than 40 or something like that. And we'll spell a few words wrong because we don't care. But actually, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this void draw. Draw, I need to explain to you guys that it runs forever. It is a loop that will continuously execute the code within draw until there is a way to break the infinite loop, guys. We're not going to discuss that in that video, but void draw, all you need to know for now is that draw is like a while loop, if you're familiar with other coding languages. So it'll execute the code within draw forever. So we're going to change this to setup because I only want it to run one time. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable. And the way we declare a variable, guys, is, I need to discuss this too. Int and then something is how you declare a variable, an integer variable. So this variable, just to put a comment, guys, 2 backslashes means I'm going to comment. I'm just going to put declaring a variable. So, and that's what we're going to do with that. You say declaring a variable. And in the variable, we're also going to do an assignment. An assignment is done by an equal sign. So I'm going to assign x to 50. And what we're doing here is in this code, we have the fact that we're checking if blah 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 is going to happen here. You know what might make it easier is I'm just going to type the code and then I'll explain it. Okay. Alright guys, so what this code will do now, this is my declaration for a variable as it's commented and says. Then we have our setup function, which only runs one time, which we only want it to run one time. And then we have this if loop that's going to check and see if x is greater than 40. If it is, then it's going to execute the code here. If it's not, then this other loop condition is going to execute, which is called an else statement. So if the if doesn't execute, then the else will execute. And that's what's going on here. So print the variable x is less than 40. So that's what we're going to have said. So guys, since it's greater than 40, we expect to see printed down here on the console that it is less than 40. So hopefully we see that. Otherwise we did something wrong. And we see the variable is greater than 40. Oh, guys, I'm a knucklehead. I said it. We expect to see less than. We expected to see greater. My bad, because we put it at 50. Ah, man, I'm off my game today. But now, if we set it less than 40, so we're going to set it to 30. Now we expect to see the else loop execute, and it does. The variable x is less than 40. So I got to get something right today, guys, and that's going to be, I guess, what I get right. So that's an if and an else loop. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do an else if loop. So we have else, now we have ifs, else ifs, and elses. So an else if is an if that will execute if the first if is false. So if this if is wrong, then it will default to this line. And if this line is true, then it executes the code within there, and it won't execute this. But so the else is like your default, guys. If both of these conditions fails, this will execute. If this condition passes, neither of these will execute. If this condition fails, then this one will execute and this one will not execute. So you guys got to think about how the structure works. I can create a code structure then of cases that I want to happen, and if they don't happen, then I can just not have them happen or whatever. So in here we're going to put an else if, and I'm going to say for a special, we're going to have a special case for x is equal to 40. And what we're going to do for x is equal to 40, and we're just going to take and we're going to copy and we're going to paste here. The variable is equal to 40. So now it's going to do something. If it's equal to 40, it's going to give us the else if condition, which now we put it equal to 40, so it better give us that else if or we did something wrong. And there it is. The variable x is equal to 40. So cool enough, guys. The print command is working just fine the way we wanted it to. And now that is pretty much it. If you guys understand this syntax and how ifs and elses work now, then you're ready to move on to your next tutorial. Quick thing though, if I put, say I put another if below this if, okay? Understand something. Once you break the structure of if, else, if, and if, you disrupt the normal flow of code. So if I put another if here, it's going to check both of these conditions. So it'll execute, if this one's true, it'll execute this. If this one's false, it won't execute this, and then it will test this. So it breaks the flow. It breaks your guys' flow. With that if in there, a basic loops that we see here are going to execute like this. This is an else if this fails, this executes. So if we put another if above it, we could put two ifs and have two ifs get tested. Ifs always get tested. Every single if. If I went through the code and put 40 if statements, if every single one of them was true, they would all execute, regardless of whether the first one failed or not. So it's really hard. If you guys don't understand what it is I'm saying there, let me show you, because I explained that pretty terribly. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take this and copy it, and then I'm going to paste it down here. I'm going to change this 40 to a 35. So here I'm going to explain to you guys what is about to happen. If this statement, we should see that this stuff prints 2 times. Why? Because if statements will always get tested. They're priority statements. So I'm going to hit the play command, and we should see, or run, and we should see 2 execution type prints here. and we only see 1. Oh, because x is not greater than 40. My goodness. What is wrong with me today? Okay. There you go, guys. We see it execute to double printed. The variable is greater than 40. The variable x is greater than 35. Okay, so that's exactly what we expect to see when we do that type of stuff. So I just want you guys to be aware. Every if loop will always get tested regardless of whether the first one fails. It doesn't matter. We don't care. But else ifs only get tested if the first if before it fails. And then you could put an infinite stream of else ifs after this. Else if, else if, else if, else if, else if, all the way down. And you could create like 40 else ifs and 1 if and then 1 else. And all of those else ifs will only execute if the previous else if was false, if the previous else if was false, all the way back up to if the previous if was false. And if all of those 40 else if statements fail, then you have a default condition called the final else, and that will execute regardless of whatever else. It will execute you will automatically have something execute no matter what. A block of code execute no matter what. So if you followed my tongue twisters and tripping over my tongue, you guys should understand if loops rather thoroughly. It's not a difficult concept to grasp, so I'm not that afraid of you guys not understanding what's going on. Play around with this code and play around with else loops and if loops and just try a whole bunch of different things. And once you guys get the hang of what this stuff does, then you're ready to move on to the next tutorial, which is probably going to be, I'm going to try to cover while and for loops in one tutorial. So it's going to be rather probably fast-paced in the next one because I want to get to some of the more juicier type of programming. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys for this tutorial. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next processing tutorial.